Ava cohort and welcome. It is Saturday, which means that it is time for Pilum Teaches DCS, where I go up in DCS and try and teach you some things about different aircraft and how to use different systems and answer some of your questions there if we're going to be watching those live, or you can catch us later on the YouTube channel. Today we're going to be going up with the JF17 Thunder, as we can indicate here on our title card for today. And we're going to be working with the GMT radar in the JF17, using that to locate a convoy and drop some laser-guided weapons on it, a variety of different bombs that we can put downrange, some laser-guided rockets, and even probably do a little bit of air refueling. And when we come home, we'll use the approach system to come back to land. So let's go ahead and get right into it and see what all's going on. It's obviously a very important strike going out here with us today. We got a couple of F-15Es and some F-16s that are going to be moving off there in front of us. But our chariot today is this guy here in the back, the JF17 Thunder, a joint fighter project between Pakistan and China. Borrows a lot of the same sort of elements as the F-20 Tiger Shark, in that it is built primarily as an export fighter and designed to give folks who have training and experience on the F-16A something easy to transition over to this aircraft here. It does have fewer pylons than the F-16, and its weapons loadout is similar in some ways and just as limited in others. But you can still pack quite a punch there with it. We're going to be using, starting outboard to inboard, of course, we got our PL5E2s, which are very similar to an AIM-9M Sidewinder. And it's going to be on both wingtip stations. On the right wing, just inboard of that, on our outboard pylon, we have the BRM-90 with our laser-guided rockets. There are 16 of them in the pod, each one of them 90 millimeters in size. On both inboard stations, we're carrying GBU-16 1,000-pound bombs. Centerline, of course, we have our WMD-7 laser targeting pod and designator. And on our outboard pylon on the left wing, we are carrying the LS6-100, which is a 100-kilogram series GPS-guided laser terminal bomb. Very similar to a like a Mark 81 with a GPS guidance package and a laser on it. Kind of a smaller version of the GBU-54. Of course, we are still, as always, packing the 23mm autocannon, which, you know, maybe we'll see some use with it, maybe we won't. We'll see what happens. And, of course, we do have a refueling probe on board for air refueling the jet. Our victims today are going to be up to 3 different convoys that are all going to be moving through. We're going to have to stop them outside of civilian population centers, which means we're going to have to hunt them down while they are out in the field. We're not going to have a specific waypoint that we can quickly slew to. We are going to have to make use of our radar to find this group as they are moving through, and then conduct a successful strike. While the vehicles are largely not threatening to a high-flying, fast-moving fixed-wing object, there is one vehicle of mostly importance. This 23mm ZU-23 truck here in the back of the convoy, providing some air defense. We are in the middle of aligning the jet, so we are still going through the process for takeoff as we get rolling here, but we'll be on our way here very shortly. Let's go ahead and unpause it, and we'll get to work. Morning, Chief. Now we're rocking out with our usual cup of coffee this morning. Make sure our ejector seat is armed and ready to go. Alignment's complete as indicated by the blinking align light. You want to turn on our external lights here. We'll follow these aircraft out. Weather outside is a downright chilly, 30 degrees Celsius. We have a little wind blowing from northeast to southwest. The Strike Eagles and the Fighting Falcons there have their own mission today. They will not be participating in ours. So it's going to be up to us to stop those convoys. Biggest targets are going to be those support vehicles comprising the heart of the convoy, like their refueling trucks and their supply trucks. Now one more aircraft in front of us here. Alright, Prowlers observed enemy light armored vehicle rolling with chicks in tow through the Promised Land. Good morning. Welcome back. That tells us that the convoy is starting to move through town. And we should be able to find them and catch them on the road. We're going to be a little asim in our load, so we'll trim that out once we're safely up. We're talking about like all your key binds and button binds and things like that. You might be able to check the configuration folder in your save games folder. And what may have happened is that for whatever reason, DCS renamed one of your control inputs. So if you change a couple of settings and save it in its current busted format, you might see a couple of different configuration files in there. You just have to rename the older one to whatever the newer one is, and that should restore the bindings for you. Alright, let's go ahead and trim this out a little bit here. Yeah, I would save backups of your control profiles. It's always a good idea. Alright, let's go ahead and start getting ourselves ready here. We're going to go ahead and go to air to ground master mode. I'm going to swap my radar over the screen here on the left. I generally keep my targeting pod or other information there on that pylon, or on that MFCD rather. I think we're going to start with the JF17s, at least for our first group. So we're going to make sure the E fuse is set. The laser code is on 1688. That's going to be important there for us. Let's go ahead and turn on our radar. And it is in map mode. Now, we do have like 90-something miles to go. So it is going to be a minute before we get to where we need to be. And that gives us a little bit of time to talk through how and what we're going to be doing here. Plus we need to close distance before we can even start trying to track them with the GMT. It's a good enough altitude for me. Alright, now the other thing we're probably going to need to do is hand off to our targeting pod what's what, so we're going to warm that up as well. And we're going to have that ready here on our opposite screen. I'm going to select the radar as our center of interest. It's indicated by the dot under the MPCD. And we're going to set ourselves to GMT1. And it is scanning 40 nautical miles in front of the jet. Which if we zoom out a little bit, for the purposes of training time, we can see our targets there. But it's only scanning out to about here, give or take. So we still got some time to go. We do have other assets that are in the area as well. Turn our lights out. Namely our tanker and everything else, because we've only got 5,200 pounds of gas. And we can see our current fuel state here in the top right corner of the jet's HUD. It's on every page. You can also check it down here. I'm going to back off the throttle just a little bit. As well, we do need to get there. We don't need to get there in a super hurry. I swing around with the radar as soy. We've got this little cross. This cross is going to be what we use to target everything that's popping up. What we're going to be looking for is illumination, because we are in ground moving target mode, and that is going to be what the radar picks out as movement on the ground. In order not to confuse the pilot and saturate them with a bunch of extra information, we're not seeing the ground returns. All those ground returns are masked. So the only thing that will stand out on this radar in this mode are targets that are on the move. We're about 60 miles away from our first waypoint there. And as we get closer, we should start to see the convoy appear on the radar. We're going to go ahead and use a little bit of time compression here just to move forward. Actually, it's not quite true. First, I'm going to do is adjust the gain and level of our targeting pod. It's all nice and crisp. And then we'll compress it a little bit. Okay, so we can see this little circle here with the 1 in it. That's our waypoint that we're coming up on. They are about 20 miles or so beyond it, so we're getting warmer. Should be just about any minute now for the purposes of this. And there they are. You see the little tick marks there as the radar sweeps over it, and we're just going to go ahead and designate that, and that will automatically slew our pod to where that target is. And we just picked up the last vehicle in line. And we're going to get a little bit closer here, and I'm going to go ahead and take the plane out of autopilot. And we're going to start flying. Now that we've designated the target with the radar, since I am using laser-guided weapons, I'm going to want to go ahead and swap over to the pod, as indicated by the dot and that bottom portion there. And as we get closer, we will eventually get some laser slant range information. Which will then allow us to area track it. We're almost close enough. Now we're going to put it in point track. In point track, the pod will continue to try and target whatever it is we're looking for and follow it in the move. Verifying our fusing here. Our E-fuse is set for our bomb. Master arm is on. We're still 16 miles away. So we still have a little bit until we can get to parameters where we're going to have a good release. You can always fire a question off here. I'll be more than happy to talk about the Strike Eagle. Welcome new chatter there. Now we're coming up on 11 miles. I don't want to get super low. Yeah, JF17 is a fantastic little aircraft. All right, pickle. And laser on. It fills a very similar role to the F-16. It's got very good air-to-air missiles. It's got very good anti-radiation missiles. A variety of different glide bombs. Some sensor-fused weapons. It's not just cast though. Like it can hold its own in an air-to-air fight. Here we go. That's a good strike on that convoy. Some of the weapons that we're bringing up here, go and pause real quick and just get back out to look at it. Yeah, that was a 1,000-pound Mark 83. Or not Mark 83, I'm sorry, a GBU-16. This is a Mark 83 with a guidance package. But this pod out here in particular, you know about the APKWS, I'm sure. That's kind of a big staple default for a lot of folks that do CAS. APKWS is a pansy-ass rocket compared to this. These are laser-guided rockets, but they are 90 millimeters in size, as compared to the APKs, which are about 70. These are capable of penetrating and destroying a T-72, hitting it from the rear. And you can carry them in two pods, one on either wing on the same station, the outboard pylon, for a total of 32 rockets available. 32 laser-guided Mavericks that have about the same sort of range at 10 nautical miles. 32 laser-guided Mavericks that can be buddy-lased in by somebody else. It's a lot of pain and punishment that can be dropped on top of a target. On your inboard stations, you can carry anti-ship cruise missiles. At the moment, the man-in-the-loop missiles are disabled, unfortunately, but you can carry those as well, which function very much like land-based harpoons with the data link pod. Here on my opposite pylon, I'm carrying 100-kilogram class glide bombs with laser terminal homing on them that we're going to be using today as well. Those are kind of similar to like a GBU-54, but they're about half the size. So they're not quite small diameter bomb, but they are also, you know, excuse me, not quite GPS only. So yeah, it's a very solid aircraft that offers a lot of different performance opportunities, and people love to sleep on it. They absolutely love to sleep on this jet simply because it's not blue. It's not an F-16. It's not a Hornet. It's not GBU-39, thank you. They're not traditional Western type aircraft, and so that causes problems for people in some ways. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and target this guy. We're going to select our rocket pod. We're going to make sure our fusing is set to E-fuse so that the rocket pod is ready to go. Nice thing about the rocket pod is it will automatically fire the laser as soon as the rocket is fired. So if you're doing self-guidance, you can do that without having to reach over and tap the button for it. Really, the only disadvantage of the 17 compared to something like the 16 is the current lack of a helmet-mounted display. But here we are 5 nautical miles out. Start. Lasers firing. Alright, our target group has been destroyed. Still have plenty of weapons on board. It's going to be a little bit before that next convoy starts moving, though, so let's go ahead and get some gas. We'll go ahead and swap our radio over to our KC-135 MPRS, which I always put the name and everything else inside the group name as far as what frequency it's on and what TACAN it's on. Let's retrim a little bit here first. TACAN. So our TACAN for this aircraft is going to be on 19 Yankee. Channel 019 Yankee band. That part's all done. Pull the EFIS back up. And we're going to set our radio channel over to 252. 252. Enter. And that switch is good. And actually our radios and our missile warning system that has one of those is all turned down and sleepy. So let's go ahead and activate those. Alright, so he's moving at 300 knots, about 17,000 feet. Which is probably this guy here. Other features of JF17, of course, missile warning system, which actually works rather nicely to let you know when weapons are around the aircraft. It has probably the second best air-to-ground radar that I've seen and played with after the F-15E. Does all the fancy things with track while scan. If the aircraft, like if you got a bunch of friendly aircraft that are linked together in a group in the mission editor, they will share data link information so you can see who's targeting what on the HSD display. It has a geolocating self-protect jamming pod that can target SAMs and ships and air-to-ground radars and actually display their physical positions relative to your aircraft on the HSD. Like I said, it's a good jet that gets slept on a lot. I remember when the thing first came out and they didn't have a lot of the weathering on the control surfaces and everything else, people were actually upset about the fact that the jet looked too new. And my only thought with that one was this is, as DCS's aircraft go on the linear timetable of what was released and active in service when, this is the newest aircraft. Not the latest module that's released, that's a whole different ball of wax, and I'm aware of that, but this aircraft was designed and built like 2006-ish. So it hasn't had the chance to have 40 years of weathering on it like, you know, the F-16s or the F-15s do. You don't have thousands of pilots who have put their asses in the chair and wiped their fingers over the controls and everything else. So, you know, there's not a lot of weathering on a newer aircraft like that. I'll start slowing down a little bit. For its type, the JF17 does have a very fuel-efficient engine. It is an aircraft the Pakistani Air Force designed to help transition its pilots from F-16As to the JF-17 and more modern systems, so that's got a lot of bones and hardware that are very similar between those two aircraft. Like, you can look at the throttle, it's an F-16 throttle. You can look at a lot of the systems and MFDs and everything else on it. It's very, very similar on purpose. DECA released a full platform and had it in a functional everything works release state on it on day one, which is not something we could say for any of the ED aircraft that they've released in the last 8 years. Minus the helicopters. That's a different division. They actually take their job seriously, but their fixed-wing parties love releasing things halfway. There was a point where I was playing DCS where the F-18-1 had no harms and had no AMRAAMs. And then when they later got harms, they were display purposes only. They didn't actually do anything. All right, let's go ahead and get ourselves situated here. We're going to retrim the aircraft. And hopefully get this done in like a pull. Mr. Tankerman, you want to fly like in one racetrack orbit there rather than two? I'd appreciate that. All right.
Ready, pre-contact. Cleared contact.
Oh, buddy, why are you turning right? Told you in the mission editor not to turn right, and yet here you are. You have to have words with that pilot later. I've done a lot of boom and receptacle, or I'm sorry, yeah, boom and receptacle tanking recently. Probe and drogue I'm going to have a little bit of a time with, but we'll make it work. Trigger and I were doing some refam work with the JF17 not terribly long ago and ended up tanking in pitch black night and weather, cold for everything we've done in the 17. Oh, come on, that was in the basket. Well, thanks, AK-47. Appreciate that.
Return free contact.
Something that I've always tried to do with my own teaching there is teach in the way and in an environment where things are going to happen. Which means every once in a while I come up here intent to teach something and end up getting shot down.
Ready, pre-contact. Cleared contact.
All right, that's a little better. That's a little better.
Contact.
There we go. Oh,
Transfer complete.
oh right, I was dumb.
Ready, pre-contact.
I might have to actually call him again. Maybe. That would figure, though. The one thing I didn't do was actually turn on the fuel transfer pumps and everything else, so that way he didn't immediately get back pressure and go, "You're full." I'm not full. We'll just reset. Gently cruise on up here again. Trim is your friend for doing this kind of tanking. Once you can get on either the boom or the drogue, it's really just a matter of keeping formation. I wiggled my toes and everything there. Like, that's the hard part about tanking, is just getting into the right position in the first place. And if you can trim your aircraft for the airspeed that you want to fly at, for the load that you currently have, you can do this super gentle on the controls.
Contact. Return contact.
I wiggled out of it. I was too aggressive on that one. It's my fault. It would. You're not wrong. I'm just already committed to this now, so I didn't hit that switch earlier. Yeah, I'm actually going to go ahead and do that. First thing I'm going to do is turn off the missile warning. I'm going to make sure I don't hit the jet. Okay. So it's giving me a configuration warning because the flight control system goes, hey, you're not carrying fuel tanks here, why are we in AG2? But the FCS panel there, on the lower left, next to the throttle, controls how the G-forces are limited in the jet automatically by the flight control computer. And by putting it into air-ground mode and air-to-ground 2, we'll have steadier inputs. Should make this a little easier. Dampens the controls a little bit. Setting good curves on your equipment is also helpful too.
Contact. You're taking fuel.
Close in on the tanker just a little bit, just to make sure we're in good position. I generally try and hold the nacelle in that 12 o'clock position right above the HUD. And as we can see, the fuel is really ticking up in that top right corner of the HUD glass, which is convenient because all of my eyes and focus are looking up there, which also means I'm not looking at chat right now, so sorry about that. 4,000 pounds, we're almost there. Getting a little close, gonna ease back on the throttle. Not too much though, because we still got to correct that rearward motion with a little bit of forward thrust. 5,000 pounds.
Transfer complete.
There we go.
Disconnect.
We'll go ahead and fall back here. We got nobody behind us. Not that there would be, it's only me here at the moment. And I don't need to go anywhere, so rather than reform right and leave, we're just going to go ahead and leave. All right, we're back in the right combat configuration. We'll bring our missile warning volume back up. Turn out our lights. And at this point, what we'll end up doing is just kind of orbit where we are right now as we wait for the next group to show up. So I'm just going to go ahead and climb on up to about 20,000 feet or so. This is the other kind of interesting feature here, and you can see where it's got a lot of F-16 bones in it. For the JF17 is that all of the airspeed units are in imperial rather than metric. It's in knots and feet rather than kilometers per hour and meters. Like seriously, if one enjoys flying the F-16, I believe you'll get enough of a kick out of the JF-17. Alright, so we're going to hang out here at about 20,000 feet. I'm going to go ahead and put myself in an attitude hold, and then change that to an altitude hold, which will combine attitude and altitude in the same axis. little perfectionist within says I need to probably get out to an actual point. There we go. Close enough for me now. And we're going to execute a little bit of time compression while we do some circles. And wait around for our next call in. We're going to make use of our LS6 100s here in the next pass, which are a much smaller bomb than the 1,000-pounder we were using before. I do love the way the desert looks here on the Afghanistan map. Living in a desert myself, like, it's nice to be able to look out and see this kind of texture here as compared to some of the unfortunate ones of earlier maps in DCS that just don't get the kind of love that they need these days. Like the NTTR, you mean to tell me that you built Las Vegas and didn't give it the new lighting engine for nighttime work? What are we doing? Let's see what the mission time here is. All right, we got about a little under 9 minutes before that next group will spawn. Chief, imagine if all of the corn that you live around was sand. Sand and rocks and scrub grass and methane down Boulder Highway. Just under 2 minutes. All right, Prowlers observed an enemy light armored vehicle moving with chicks in tow through the promised land. Our next group is up and on the move. Going to take the plane out of autopilot. We're going to go back to air-to-ground master mode. Uncage our fancy-dancy pod. And go back from map mode to GMT1. And this time we're going to drop the other bombs. Again, double check our fusing. One of the little signature little quirks about the JF17 is that every single time you change weapons from one to another, with the exception of some of the heavier bombs like our GBU-16, it will resafe the fusing on it. So in a pinch, if you're trying to, you know, oh shit, I need this other weapon here real quick, I really want to throw a rocket at it, and you top over the rocket and go, okay, cool, everything's good there, dart, and then nothing happens. The dart fired, it went, it guided, it went to where it's going to go, but then, you know, it just turned into a 90mm lawn dart that had no explosive force behind it. Your fusing failed to be set correctly. Other glide weapons that are available to the JF17. You have the GB6, and it comes in 3 flavors, just like the JSOWs for the Hornet. You have the GB6 Standard, which is just a cluster bomb. Spreads out some submunitions, rain skittles all over the place. The GB6HE, which functions like the unitary broach version of the JSOW. It's exactly the same way, just a larger glide package. And then you have the GB6 SFW, which is like a CBU 105 on steroids, with a lot more anger. The big downside to those weapons, of course, being the radar cross-section. So I tend to throw the GB6s in first, and then wait for a minute, and as soon as a radar dares illuminate itself, throw an LD-10 out at it. Because they can be detected by a lot of different ground radar systems and engaged by SAM sites like the SA-15. Thank you, Chief. You can always count on Chief to keep me honest. Okay, so we're going to push out here again. We're waiting on our target structures there to get through that city. We don't want to cause any collateral damage / international incidents / losing the hearts and minds of the people that are here. Kind of cruise out to our first waypoint. That tone would tell me that I'm in range of the first waypoint to go ahead and drop the bomb in the current mode. So if you're looking to drop them in like auto and things like that, that's the kind of tone that you're listening for to say, hey, hold the pickle button down and the bomb will go where it needs to go. Because right now it's targeting the waypoint. Oh, yeah. You're not wrong. It is more like the glide weapon JSOW with sensor fused weapons, but since we don't have that in DCS, the CB105 is really kind of the closest, being a GPS guided sensor fused dispenser. And it works the same way too. Like you put that over the top of a bunch of tanks and armor and other assorted vehicles and things like that, and they'll lollipop all of them. The real party trick of the the JF17 are the LS6 series of weapons, because they come in 100, 250, and 500 class, which is kilograms. Because again, it's a joint jet, so you got a lot of things that are rated in pounds, and there's a handful of things that are rated in kilograms. I'm actually going to set up for steer point 2, because that's going to be closer to where these guys are at, and we are picking them up. Let's do what we did before. We toggle over to the radar. We've made that our sensor of interest, as indicated by the little dot here on the left side of the interface, or the center part of the left MPCD. Move our cursor around here to the target. Tap designate. It will slew the pod over. We're going to verify our target by selecting the pod as soy. And zooming in, and we can see them making the turn into town. We're probably going to stop these guys pretty quick, short outside of town. So we're just going to observe them here for now. I'm not redesignating with the pod, but I am on the pod as soy. And since I haven't redesignated with the pod, it is currently slave to the radar target. But yes, the old party trick there with those is they have some pretty broad wings on them. So you can pitch those things almost 90 degrees off bore. And as long as all of your other parameters are good and it's got the altitude and everything else, it will turn pretty hard, much sharper from what I've seen than a JDAM, and make the attack. And here we are 12, 13 nautical miles, and it's telling me that my weapon could, in fact, hit that target if I needed it to. But I'm not going to drop it just yet, because they are still in the middle of town. We're about to lose them with the radar, though, as it's getting out to the gimbal, so I'm going to change over to point track. And we'll start following them that way. The WMD-07 pod can also do laser spot search, similar to other pods. So if you've got a buddy in the area who's like, hey, I've got a target for you, I'm going to go ahead and sparkle my laser on it. If you're in the area and the pod's looking in that direction, you can do an LSS on it for the same frequency and find the target that way. Got a wide variety of ways that you can make the shooty bang bang murder in this jet. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit here. I want to try and catch them once they leave the town. Oh, we're about to mass the pod. All right. Gun truck, gun truck, gun truck. Big truck. Yeah, it's an INS mode. All right. Lay him a little bit out in front of him. We'll turn back around. All right, we're 6 miles away. Moving through the heart of the city now. Give it a little bit of time compression here as while folks are watching. We're still on point track, still moving through. They're coming up to the outskirts though. We won't have to wait too long. That's the town there. Moving through the MSR right there, center of the screen. It's a main service road for those who are unfamiliar with the term. We went back to INS track though, so I'm gonna have to flip the jet around and see if we can find him again real quick. All right, here we go. I want that vehicle first. Fusing verified. Master arm is on. It is an extremely pretty map. It's my favorite desert map by far. Pickle. And lasers on. Let's make sure we don't mask our pod. And as we can see, much smaller bomb, much smaller boom. pretty much good at killing just the one vehicle. We're going to go ahead and extend a little bit, and we will re-attack that group with our second small bomb. Probably try and eliminate the air defenses on that one the next time. I'll flip back to our radar here. So hopefully we will pick them up in ground moving target. No, but they did disperse, which is bad for them. Pickle, Sparkle. It's kind of creepy to watch. Just a little casual flyaway on that one. Laser's still burning. It's got 24 seconds on the current impulse. We might have to refire it here. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and just refire it now. Fuel truck's destroyed. Yeah, they're not they're the best for point targets, is really what it kind of comes down to. The radar cross section that Chief's talking about is extremely small, so it is less likely to get intercepted. All right, I'm actually going to designate that point right there, and we'll turn the laser off for now. Yeah, that works. So they're really good at killing things like Tors from high altitude, as long as you're above their ceiling. Pansirs would be a good target, as long as you're above their ceiling. Now, they are very good at killing those kinds of things and doing it largely stealthily. All right, Pickle, bombs away. I'm going to start sparkling there. I believe the bomb has captured itself. Certainly looks like it. Kiss, kiss, boom, boom. Let's go and select ourselves a new target, like that guy. These 90mm rockets, if you're up 25,000 feet or so, you can really get almost 10 nautical miles out of them, give or take, depending upon your release airspeed. The motor gives you a little bit of a saving grace there, but remember, it does have to glide the rest of the way. Now, similar to an APK, you'll just aim up with them a little bit, give it a little bit of an arc, so that you're still in release parameters. You can't release it pointing too deeply. Like if you're you're in too steep of a dive, they won't release, as we're about to find out here. Oh, that was good enough. It's like above 45, 50 degrees or so, it tends to have problems. Shack ZU-23. What else we got here? Apparently we got a gas and a refueler truck. And the little cross there that you can see inside the circle is where the gun pipper actually is. That looks like our friends. I'm going to go ahead and mark him up. Important things to remember diving in for a gun run is, especially in air-to-ground mode, you really don't have a whole lot of G to play with. So be short, be quick, and plan to pull out sooner than what you think, because you may not have the ability to get out of that kind of a dive if you're too fast and too hot and too deep. I'm also acutely aware of what I said there with that. You can continue with the giggling, that's fine. I did too on the inside. Thank you, iHort. All right, let's finish this group off with style. Rockets are still fused, everything's good to go. Start. Lasers firing. And shack group. Now we do have 12 more rockets on board, but I really don't feel like hammering the hell out of a whole convoy group just by myself with just the rockets. Let's go and shut our laser off here. Snowplower pod. We've got 1,400 pounds on board the jet. Tanker's nearby though, so let's just go ahead and get ourselves a little situated there.
Warning.
Donate our rocket pod to some family down there. They can use it for other purposes. Retrim a little bit.
Arco 1-1 in field 1. Request rejoin. In field 1, Arco 1-1. Proceed to pre-contact at 17,000 at 300.
He's close by. Let's go ahead and box TACAN here. And the little yellow triangle at the end of our heading strip there tells us the direction to fly for TACAN navigation. Baby crib would be appropriate. It's not a fuel tank, so they can't use it as like a canoe or a boat or a water tank or anything else like that. It's, I guess what tends to happen sometimes with those. Green line indicates a friendly target or a positive response from the IFF system. It is automatic when you designate a target. You have to do a manual press if you're sweeping radar targets that are in an area trying to find who's friendly and who isn't. It does take it a couple of passes to read transponder information, so you're going to make sure that you press and hold your IFF challenge button there, which will light up this little box around the word IFF when it's actually doing its work. Give it at least a couple of sweeps of the radar before making a decision as to whether or not that person is potentially hostile. Go ahead and preemptively dial our missile warning system volume to 0 so that I don't have to listen to the Deka Ironworks Devs' wife tell me warning for the next 15 minutes. So we don't accidentally oopsie-poopsie the tanker, we'll make sure we're safe for our weapons. We'll continue to close, we'll get ourselves a nice full tank of gas, and then we'll go home to Kandahar. Then we can do a little bit of review and TAC view. Talk about the things we worked with today. Answer any other last minute questions folks might have. And that ought to put us to time as far as our training and teaching sessions go. Alternatively, if by the time I get back to base and land, we get a call for that third convoy coming through, I might rearm and go try and deal with that real quick. Yeah, we'll see if our second work on that is smoother push than our first. Tell up here we've got just over 1,000 pounds worth of gas on board the jet now, down to about 1/5 of our usual carrying capacity. It is draining steadily out of the feed tank. You know, you think the throttle response is kind of bad. It does work faster in reverse than it does forward. Like she'll just lose airspeed as soon as you pull the throttles back. You know, Harder, if you want to keep being smart about it, you can always put up your own teaching stream and talk yourself and everybody else through tanking with the tanker while you're doing it at the same time. I'll wait. All right, I'm going to retrim the aircraft because we are substantially lighter than what we were the last time we were here. A little bit of nose down. Try and make sure I'm not caught in her wake.
Ready, pre-contact. Cleared contact.
And switches forward, so we are set to refuel all tanks. That's too much. Let's reset and do it right. The least amount of fuel in any jet that I've had coming up to a tanker and successfully plugging it and not just falling out of the sky behind it was 110 pounds with the F4. The FCS is set. It's in air to ground 2 and air to ground mode. I'm just being a numpty and trying to walk and chew bubble gum all at the same time.
Contact.
That'll work.
You're taking fuel.
Just fighting to a good position. Now we just got to stay here. Clock's running up. 1,700 pounds. £2,100. £2,500. I like that the fuel's on the front end of the HUD. Oh, you're a little squirrely as the CG is shifting. Got it though. Should be able to get a nice full sip. £1,000 to go.
Transfer complete. Disconnect.
All right. We'll say doing it at night, at least with the air refueling light on. Highly recommended. That basket lights up really nicely under it. It illuminates it really well when you're in good position. All right, so we've done all of that. It's now time to go home. And there is an easy way that we can do this. I'm going to go and pause here for a minute while we talk about that. We're going to put the JF17 into an approach and landing mode, as there are several waypoints that are pre-programmed with the jet based upon where you were when you took off. So we pull up our kneeboard. Actually, I'm going to have to unpause because it's only going to let me do that live. Just put the autopilot on 20,000 feet. And we can see here that waypoints 50 through 58 are different runways and airports. For example, it tells me that there's a TACAN beacon at Kandahar. Runway is on either 23 or 05. There's no ILS beacon there. None of these aircraft or places have an ILS. It is unfortunate, but we're going to work with it anyway. So to do this, we're going to change our waypoint system from Flight Plan Alpha to APR or approach mode. And we're going to do that by hitting a little button here on the out front console next to FPA and selecting APR. We can then change this waypoint to any of the other ones here, and in this case we do want it on waypoint 50, but also as important, it will pre-program and activate your TACAN beacon for the right base. It tells you all of the other course information and your glide slope of 3 degrees to come in and land. The last thing that it does is that it puts up a little waypoint line and flight path information to get you right on down to the runway. So now we just have to fly the line. It almost always sets you up for a 10 nautical mile straight in approach with a little hold pattern off one end of the runway or the other. That hold pattern is meant to be flown starting at 6,000 feet AGL. So if you've got a variety of aircraft that are all coming in, the weather's bad and everything else, you can stack up appropriately and people just run the circle and step down like they would if they were waiting in line for a Case 1 recovery on the carrier. We're going to cruise at 20,000 feet. Let the autopilot do the work for us. I believe for the JF17 you have 20 flyable waypoints, waypoint 01 through 20. Then there are a handful of target waypoints in the 30 series that are used primarily for steering like cruise missiles and things like that, programming their flight path. I want to say it's waypoint 38 that it uses for the targeting pod. I could be a little off on that one. Chief will probably correct me in a minute. And then the 50 series is reserved for approach and landing. So for those of you who are out there as mission editors, if you're trying to be considerate to your Thunder pilots, try to only give them 20 steer points and no more. Anything more than that and you start running into other programs on the jet that can cause other problems. A lot of the other aircraft have very similar setups for things like that. Like the F-16 has waypoints that are set aside in it for different buttons and features, like the 26 through 28 or 30 or so is all of your different mark points in the jet. So if you have waypoints out that high for some reason, like, I'm going to build this massive mission that's got all these potential places people could be, and, I'll let people fly out to all these different spots. If you run the waypoints up that high, you actually overwrite the mark points themselves, and then the mark points are not as useful for, automatically slaving the pod around and looking at stuff and transmitting that information to your fellow wingmen. Other aircraft are just limited from age, such as the F4. We can only store up to 2 waypoints at a time, and the Rio or Wizzo has to flip those waypoints around and kind of leapfrog over one another as they're flying. Jester does that automatically, a human one may not. The F-14's only got 3 actual steer points, and it's got up to a total of 7 additional waypoints that can be pre-programmed, like fixed point, surface target, initial point, hostile area, etc. All of those can be pre-programmed, but anything over the 3 steer points that you place down in the mission editor is put on a reserve page for the Rio to program later in flight and kind of leapfrog from point A to point B. So sometimes going out of your way to try and place waypoints to go, I'm going to help the fixed-wing people find targets, ends up hurting the jet after a certain number and threshold of potential targets and outcomes. Plus, the other thing too is these days you've got a route tool in multiplayer that appears in this top left-hand corner next to this little cursor. Can't see it here because I'm in single player, but the route tool looks like a series of waypoints, and it will let you place waypoints on the map and save them. And all of the same mission editor rules apply. So, for example, if I was programming a path with the F-15E Strike Eagle, and I took off from Kandahar, and I went someplace, and it's like, okay, well, I know that out here at Camp Bastion on this apron, I've got my target vehicles for today that I'm going to come hit. I'm going to put a waypoint here, and then I can name it $T or #T for depending upon how old you are. And that, just like in the mission editor, tells it I want this to be pre-programmed as an attack waypoint, a decimal waypoint in the F-15. That will automatically slew all of your fire control information over that way. It will pre-program your auto release for bombs if you're using auto mode. It gives you all of that steering cue information automatically as soon as you pull the waypoint up in the jet. Like, you can pre-program those using the same commands like you would in the mission editor for creating those different steer points. Pound's a good one. I like Pound. Natural for the music lovers out there. That's probably a good one too. As we can see here, we are closing in on our base. I'm going to go ahead and do just a quick IFF scan of this target that we can see out there. And since we've caught him already a couple of times, he lit up pretty quick. You can see the little yellow triangle that indicates that our radar has picked him up. That's not a data link contact. But when I hold the IFF and the cursor sweeps over him, give it a couple of passes, he lights up as a friendly. It looks like he's actually on approach to come in and land too, and judging by the RWR contact of an F-16, that's probably, yep, an F-16. Coming back in to land. Must have experienced problems or something out there while they were on their mission. He doesn't have his fuel bags on board. So as we're getting closer, I'll step down the scan range of the SSD here again as we get a little closer to the target. But you see our waypoint brings us into this hold pattern circle, and that little firm dot is our jumping off point. We're coming back in on the runway, on the active runway that is on the airfield. In this case, it is it's like runway 23. Set our nose wheel light to landing mode. Still in bad configuration. We can go ahead and turn that off. Bring our missile warning back up. Haven't had to hit the defog button yet. The JF17 is one of very, very few aircraft in DCS. It might even be the only aircraft in DCS that actually models things like temperature affecting frosting inside the glass. So if you are flying around and you're like, damn, I can't see anything out here because your canopy window's completely frozen over, you can hit that defog button and it will thaw it out. I'm gonna let that run for a minute or two because once I press it, it's going to bring the cabin back to temperature for us. We are getting closer. Let's go ahead and give ourselves plane in hand, and we'll begin our descent. Roll over just a little bit. That's home. Would be a lot easier to access all the information. That's for sure. Sometimes you gotta just kind of work with the limitations that we do have. That said, the glass cockpit of the JF17 is very nice all around for the things it lets you do. And if you've got little F-16 MFDs, you can use most of those buttons, but not all of them, because there's a lot more buttons on these, as these screens are physically larger than the ones in the F-16. But you can program up all of the important buttons that you'd like to use. We're going to go ahead and descend a little further. As we're up about 7,000 feet radar altitude. One of the things to keep in mind about the JF17 versus the F16, and this is a difference here for landing as we're coming up here to make our turn. The JF17 uses a drogue chute to slow down and stop. The controls for that, I've got them bound to a button, but this little control box here, deploy chute, neutral position, and jettison chute. When you land with the 17, you don't want to hold the nose up and do the whole aero braking like you would in the F16. Between the drogue chute and the brakes on the jet, they actually work. They will stop the plane pretty quick. So trust the drogue chute. Keep your 3-degree glide slope down. And you should be fine. We're well below landing gear safe speed, so we're going to go ahead and drop our gear and tick our flaps. Flaps have 2 settings, up or down. If we were flying under an ILS, there would be additional hash marks around our flight path marker. And when they form a cross surrounding the flight path marker, you are on glide slope and on good angle coming into the base. In this case, I don't have an ILS on Kandahar. So we are just going to have to kind of fly that one without it. That said, though, we do have our approach line that tells us where we're going. We have a waypoint to the active runway, which is that square box. And the AOA indexer is that E-bar currently next to the flight path marker on the middle of the screen. Approach, landing, and touchdown speeds are very similar for the JF17 to the F16. I'm doing about 167 knots right now. And I am just about on attitude. You do have some additional lines that appear in navigation mode with the gear down. For example, we have a 2.5-degree line. Where we did not have that with the gear up. The waypoint itself is actually on the TACAN beacon, so that's just something to try and pay attention for, is beacons are not usually located in the middle of the runway, but they will be close by, so you might have to realign just a little bit to make sure that we're in good parameters. Once we get closer to the airfield, I'll be putting that flight path marker and the E-bar pretty much where I want the rear wheels to touch down. I'll execute a very gentle flare, slight nose-up attitude. So we make gentle contact with the runway, and then we'll deploy the chute and apply the brakes. And do full aft stick so that our flight control surfaces will fully deflect and aid in slowing the jet down. Properly configured and on glide slope, your throttle input should control your vertical position and your rate of descent. We're coming down nice and gentle. Just going to give it a little bit of fuel gas here as we slow that sink rate down.
Altitude.
Little flare, power's idle, mains are down, and chute's deployed. Full aft. Haven't turned the nose wheel steering on yet. We'll do that now. The drogue chute deploy button has a couple of couple of nice little features to it because you really only need to bind the deploy button. I mean, unless you got your own fancy super sim pit setup where you got all these different switches, you might want to actually model the whole switch, and you can do that. But if you don't, you just tap the button again. We're going to cross the active here first. And that will jettison the chute. Tap it a third time, it will return the switch to the neutral position. Some lovely hangars over there. We're going to just move on up to them. So we've done some successful convoy hunting here today. Yeah, maybe we won't go all the way to the hangars. We'll park over here. A little closer to the BX anyway, you know. Park and brake set.
Warning. 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 Warning.
Take our DTC with us so we can plug it into the quote TACView recording studio quote. There we go. Let's go ahead and take a look at TACView and we'll review the flight. It's going to be the other file. There we go. All right. So, for those who are unfamiliar, TACView is a third-party program that interfaces with DCS, with Falcon BMS, with IL-2 Battle of X, with a couple of other little games out there. Sea-Power, I think it does now, and technically it can also do ARMA, but I've not seen how any of that one works for ARMA. But what TACView does is it takes telemetry data that is already available and being, transmitted and recorded and saved and everything else during the game, and puts it into a file that it can then put into a 3D little world representation, and you can review your flight, see what happened, where things went, and answer some of the age-old questions of why did I spontaneously combust in DCS, as, all of a sudden you find out that there was a MiG-29 with a ET behind you that never illuminated your radar warning receiver because it never needed to. So this is just going to be a recap of our flight. And again, our mission was to stop convoys using GMT mode. Have my ambient fighters taking off, going out to do ambient things. A couple of F-15E Strike Eagles and some F-16s. Fighting Falcon's going to go do their thing. We got our tanker that's up here doing his thing, and we've got our target du jour, this convoy moving up the MSR. We identify that target area with our radar, and the first attack that we made is with a GPU-16 1,000-pound bomb. we found him using the GMT mode on the radar, and again, the GMT will blank out the radar display, and it will only show you moving targets that it can find. So if you were on a server, whether it's like the VRS server, or if you're on our server, or if you're anywhere else, and there's a convoy objective that is on the move going from point A to point B, you can go ahead and use GMT mode on the radar to locate and identify that target, and then switch over to a targeting pod and successfully identify that target and go, yep, that's exactly what it is I'm looking for, and then conduct your engagement. Just kind of a general reminder for employing weapons. The best weapons to use on a moving convoy like that are going to be weapons that have a laser associated with them, or have some other mode of guidance, such as like a Maverick or the C701 on the JF17 if you're using the 17 to attack the target that way. Using the C701s are going to be what we'd use next week, which should be a lot of fun. Can't carry nearly as many of those as we can carry rockets, but, you know, it is what it is. So, moving target, use a guided weapon, because the big problem with GPS guided weapons like JDAMs, like LS6s, like any of those, is they are going to a set of coordinates. So unless you lead the target by the right amount, your GPS weapon is not going to correct itself mid-flight and strike a moving target. Like, those are really good for static emplacements, that kind of thing. Moving targets, we want to use a laser-guided type weapon or a self-guided type weapon that can track the target on its own once released. So we used GMT, we found our target group, we got into the zone, we're tracking it now with the targeting pod. We drop our GBU-16. We climb and kind of offset a little bit to make sure we keep out of the reach of that ZU-23 gun that we know is part of the convoy group. And we are firing the laser. So that bomb is tracking the target, making its own course corrections, strikes it in the middle, and eliminates most of the group. We identified that there were one vehicle left. It was the BRDM-2 leading the convoy that pulled off the side of the road. Gave him a little love tap with the BRM-1. Lasers firing. Kaboom. At this point, we're down to about half a tank of gas. So we came up. Fumbled around the tanker for a minute. And then we got a full tank. And at this point, we did circles for a bit under time compression, which we will also do here, until that other group spawned in. If I successfully identified that they were out there, track them again with the GMT, follow up looking with them at the pod, and realize that they are, in fact, still in the middle of town. So we got to wait on them to drive through before engaging them, because we did not want to cause collateral harm to this city. To get outside of town, we drop our LS6-100, very small bomb. Strike the truck, which causes the group to split and disperse defensively off the end of the road. Identified our target again for the second LS6. Finished him off. I believe our next attack was the GBU-16. Killed the ZSU truck, so they are, at this point, defenseless. These vehicles are unarmed. So we swing back in. We can even watch from the cockpit view. Play it in real time. It will more or less follow my head tracking as well. I deployed the air brake here to try and keep the speed under control. It's watching the gun pipper walk itself up to the target. Give it a short burst, 18 rounds. And we hit with all 18 rounds and destroyed the truck. Looking under us there. Go back and watch that again from this view. Put it up. And then we came back around, very quickly identified the last target, gave him a rocket. Group destroyed. That was that. We came up, we got ourselves a little bit more gas, topped off the tank, and then flew the approach course home. That was that. It's a good jet. There's a lot of good things that can be done with the aircraft. I certainly have a lot of fun with it there. We've got time. We got time here. Let me go ahead and close this down. We'll switch back to DCS for a minute since we still got folks here. And we'll do an actual INS landing. It's going to need me to change maps here real quick. And we'll do a little bit of startup and out and back, that kind of deal. It'll give us a second to do a little bonus feature on this one. We'll talk about the pylon arrangement of the jet and what we can put where. And why. And we'll do an actual startup with her too, from cold and dark. I did one before we started on the stream, but here we go. Let's wait for all the textures here to quickly load in. While we're doing that, though, we can go ahead and have them pull the inlet covers off. All right, so rearm and refuel. Let's go ahead and set my board number in. My favorite skin for this jet, which is the U.S. Air Force Chips Camo Fictional. And let's look at pylons. So we got 7 pylons spread out across the length of the jet. 1 and 7 are only available for your PL-5E2s. Defensive infrared missiles, so pretty much always carry those. 2 and 6 is where you can really kind of get the most bang for your dollar, because this is where you can put the SD-10, which is the AMRAAM type air-to-air missiles. They are active radar terminal homing, so they are Fox 3 derivatives rather than Fox 1s. You can put them in single mounts or dual mounts. The LD-10 is the same missile base as the SD-10, but it uses a different seeker head, which allows it to kill radars. So that is your anti-radiation missile, and that can be carried in single or double mounts. Weighs the same and has the same functional range as the SD-10. The C-701s, IR and T, are the Chinese Mavericks that you've got available. They come in infrared and TV guided in terms of how their seeker head works. various bombs. We have rails that will carry pairs of GBU-12s, pairs of Mark 20s, but why you would ever bring a cluster bomb in DCS's damage modeling, I have no idea. But you do you, whatever makes you happy. Mark 82s, Mark 82 Snake Eyes, LS6 100 dual rack, LS6 250 dual rack, single racks for the 250, single racks for the 500, which is 1,000 pound, because it's in kilograms, remember, not in pounds for the LS series. Individual Mark 20s, Mark 82s, Mark 83s, and even the Type 200A in single and dual mounts, which is the Durandal bomb, the anti-runway cratering bomb. It has a little rocket motor on the back. You can also carry the target designation pod on one of these two stations. I have no idea why anyone would really do that, because you're really limiting your own effective weapons use there on that one, but it's possible. And of course, you can also carry the rocket pods, which you have either dual mount Lao 68 7-shot rockets that have the Hydras in them, the Mark 5s. So they're weighty, but why do that when you can carry 16 count pods of BRM 90s, either in unguided or laser guided versions? I can see where one might do it. For me, though, I always prefer to have my targeting pod on the center line. But I guess maybe if I wanted to bring a targeting pod and a self-protect jammer pod, that might be a scenario for it. But yeah, one BRM pod is really enough. Usually, though, I tend to go up and carry like SD10s on one pylon and then my rockets on the other. But the combination exists there. There are places where you could use that. Your inboard pylons, station 3 and 5, can only carry droppable things. And yes, there are air-to-ground missiles. Right now, the CM802 AKG is disabled. That's why it's got that DIS nomenclature there next to it. What that is a C802 AK, but it has a camera up front that can do CCD or IR. And it has, in combination with the data link pod, the ability to allow man-in-the-loop terminal guidance, where you can fly the weapon from your aircraft. That feature right now, that whole weapon system is kind of disabled, so at the moment we've just got the C802 AKs, which function very much like harpoons. Good anti-ship weapons, good sea skimmers, but the big thing with those is that they fall away from the jet first before the rocket motor fires, because these inboard stations are too close to the engine intakes. That rocket motors and things like that run the risk of shutting the engine down through gas ingestion. On this station, you can also carry the GB6 in standard high explosive sensor fused weapons versions. You can carry GBU 10s, 12s, or 16s, the LS6 500, Mark 20 Sadness Rockeye 2s, if that's what you really want to use, single mounts for any of the other bombs, and a single mount for the Durandal. This is also the only station where you could put on the large fuel tanks, the 1,100 liter tanks, or you can put on the smaller 800 liter tank. Centerline, you can carry bombs, either GBU 10 or 16, or Mark 83 or Mark 84. You can also carry an 800 liter fuel tank if you so desire. But this is also where you can carry the targeting pod, the data link pod, which is functionally useless right now because the only weapon that we can use for the data link pod is not working. Do not need a data link pod to be able to data link to other aircraft for, receiving that information from the AWACS, for example. The KG600 is the self-protect jamming pod that will also geolocate SAM threats and other radar threats. Very similar to like a Super HTS on the F-16, and that's carryable there on the center line. For our purposes, though, we're really just going to do like a quick up and down. I am going to go ahead and put weight on the wings because I can. Kind of go with a classic sort of I'm going out to kill things loadout.
Request rearming. Copy.
And let's go through startup. The first most important thing is to make sure that you use the configuration panel to have them remove the ladder and inlet covers. The only thing I configure with it by the default is, oh no, it doesn't make any sense because the LS6 500s can be carried there. I was going to say maybe the wings might be an issue with it, but there's no winglets on the 100s.
Rearming
Yeah,
complete.
I don't know what the logic is there otherwise. But anyway, startup. We want to make sure we pull out both the safety pin for the ejector seat arming handle between the seat and arm the seat. Turn on the batteries and both generators, AC and DC. Generally at this point I tend to dial up my lighting to comfort. Plug in the G-suit and oxygen. Turn on SHARs. Unlock the throttle handle. Turn on the fuel pump. Turn on the engine control. Press and hold the starter. You'll see a little door open up there on the bottom as the APU starts up. APU door closes. I've released the button. Got light off. At this point, I usually come up to the AAP and put it in combat mode. Also turn on all of the other switches that we're not on. I'm in the habit of touching the HMD button even though we don't have an HMD at this time. Dial up the UFC's display, dial up the head-up display. It will fade into view as it gets power. It's also a good time to turn on the radio. I tend to leave the missile warning off for a while, because otherwise she gets mad about configuration. But we are going to go ahead and set the environmental control system, the ECS, to normal operating mode. Taking it from off, that will start putting air into the mask and air in throughout the jet. I don't need to update my DTC, so we're going to go ahead and close this and seal the canopy. We're going to plug the DTC cartridge in. Takes 2 taps. First tap to put the 8-track in the slot, second one to shove it down. The front left MFD will now display DTC is locked and ask what information we want to transfer. And hit all. So it selects all of this information and enter. And we'll start transferring the information over. This includes the configuration information for all of the weapons on the jet. So every time you rearm the jet on the ground, you'll need to stop. You don't need to turn the jet off, but you do need to open the canopy, eject the DTC with 2 taps on the eject button, and then tell the person through the F8 menu, update DTC data. At this point, Betty is warning us about our configuration, so we're going to make sure that our switch is in the proper mode. Now we need to align the jet. There are 2 ways this can be done. The first one involves encoding waypoint 0 with your current position, which can be found on your kneeboard page for lat and long alignment. The other easier way that you can do it is to go into the configuration panel, tick the Update INS Align Data button, click Apply, wait for him to say coordinates ready.
Coordinates ready.
You can see that the waypoint has updated, including our current altitude and other situations. We can now begin alignment of the jet. To do this, we're going to go ahead and do 2 things. The first one, I'm going to double check the kneeboard, and I'm going to look at our true heading here, which is 220. That's going to be important here in a second. We're going to plug that into the jet. I'm going to talk through it before I do it. We're going to move this switch from standby to fast. After a couple of seconds, there will be an arrow that appears in the bottom right-hand corner of the INS alignment page, because what we need to do is tell it what our true heading actually is. 220. After a second or 2 of no input, or after having placed an input, it will begin the alignment process for the jet. Starts counting down, takes about 40 seconds. During this time frame, it's always a nice spot to go ahead and turn on the IFF system. We do that by pressing the IFF button on the UFC. We are looking at the interrogator page now, indicated by INT in the top left corner. We're going to select mode 6, so it has a plus. We're going to hit the little dot here in the top right-hand corner to change to the transponder. Also select mode 6. Go back to the main screen by pressing return. Jet's still aligning, got about 9 seconds left. We're going to wait on that first, and then we'll turn on the data link system for the jet. You don't have to do it in that order, but since we're talking and walking at the same time, that's what we're going to do. If you've navigated away from the INS page, which you can do as soon as you plug in your true course there, you can verify that your alignment is complete by the blinking align words there in the HUD. It also blinks fast down here at the bottom to indicate that is done. Put this in INS nav mode, navigation alignment is complete. We're going to go ahead and turn on the data link. We do that by selecting our radio COM2, which is the only radio that is set aside for the data link in the jet. We're going to select it twice to change it to channel 199er. 199er is the channel for data and TDMA. As we are the only aircraft flying, we're going to select master mode and change this to read NES by ticking the button next to any dash. If we were operating with another JF17, we would leave this in Slav or slave mode. Doesn't indicate that we need to be, squatting with our feet firmly planted on the ground. And then just hit the little switch here so that it reads NES again. The last thing we're going to do is go to the HNS page. We're going to select INS so that it reads INS plus GPS alignment. HNS will now be lit up. So we know we've got some good alignment information going on to continuously update us that in the jet. You do have a lot of different light styles and switches that you can configure all of your different lights and warning panels for. And then fine-tune it by selecting brightness and contrast on the different MFD panels. Our flap switch is over here on the left. It is either up or down. When down, TEF is lit up on our gear handle switch. Our landing, takeoff, and taxi light for the nose wheel is controlled through that switch there. Our parking brake is the next one here to the left. And of course, we're familiar with the air-to-air refueling or air-air refueling switch. Our FCS panel is set up. At this point, the jet is ready to roll. We're going to go and put ourselves in navigation mode. Set ourselves on for some steady lights, nice and bright. Give ourselves a little Morse code blinker on our anti-collision light. Turn on the master lighting switch. And we're looking good. Throttle up a little bit, take the park and brake off. Turn on nose wheel steering. And we're going to go ahead and taxi out here to runway 3 right. As far as the glide weapons in the jet are concerned, in terms of like functional ranges that you can get out of the systems, flying fast enough and high enough, utilizing a waypoint to attack, you can probably get upwards of 45 to 50 nautical miles out of the glide weapons. It's going to take them a minute to get there, but it is in the realm of possible. Your targeting pod, however, has a very short limit of about 20 nautical miles that it can actually area or point track a target. So if you're using the pod to designate those weapons, you do have to be quite a bit closer. The MFDs can be configured for preference. I tend to put my stores management system on the lower page and whatever sensor I'm fighting with on the left. This is a good time to go ahead and start warming up your targeting pod, taking it out of off mode and into idle. I usually flip back to nav mode here for takeoff and initial steering. I was using the dynamic spawning slots, it would have put me on the appropriate end of the runway, but being a single player, it tends to drop you just in the one spot, and then I've got the jet actually placed as a template. Chief brings up what I was going to bring up next. The most important thing here with your MFD screens is that it does remember where you've put things. So as I go back to the air-to-ground master mode, it pulls up the screens in the places where I left them. So you can pre-configure all of your different pages for your various master modes, either navigation, air-to-air, dogfight, or air-to-ground, and get all those pages dialed in nice and neat as a pin in whatever way you like. And it will remember where those things were. So when you move away from that master mode and come back to it later, it will be available for you to use. An important note about the gun in the JF17, and this is again a quirk with the aircraft that is different from something like the F-16. You do have to manually feed it, as we did earlier, by selecting the gun first and then pressing the feed button, as it then chambers a shell for us. Before that weapon will be ready to use. Very similar to the MiG-21, in that it is the same weapon that you would find on that aircraft. A lot of heavy high-G maneuvering, that kind of thing, can occasionally jam that weapon where you need to feed it again to get it to work. So I generally leave it in whatever position it is by default until I'm getting ready to use it, like getting ready to go into a dogfight or getting ready to attack a ground target, and then take the time to carefully set the thing up. The gun is, in fact, the worst part of the JF-17, because in the F-16 and other aircraft, you know, you have the master arms on, the gun trigger's hot, it's ready to fight. Nose wheel steering's off. We are airborne, gears coming up, flaps coming up. The Pipper is really nice, though, in air-to-air combat mode. You know, you get all of the traditional loco symbology and everything else on it. Little Pipper with a star on it and a range ring around it. And since we got time here on the stream, I think what we'll end up doing is we will go ahead and fly out to this target point, attack it real quick, and then land at Creech, which will allow us to use that approach mode again. And Creech actually has an ILS. So we can see here 108.7 and attack end, so it's got all the bells and whistles, which will allow us to use that cross that we talked about before and actually demonstrate it in action. Glide weapons in the JF17, if you've got a waypoint selected or a target point selected, you've got this dotted line and this bar and this waypoint with the circle on it. All of those things mean different items in the jet. When the bar reaches the wings of your aircraft and this line becomes solid, you are within range and parameters to release the weapon. The circle outside and around the waypoint indicates the minimum range for successful engagement. So if you are releasing inside that circle and you're not already more or less pointing directly at your target, there's pretty good odds that whatever glide weapon you're going to release is not going to be able to make whatever turn it needs or dive properly or successfully engage that target, especially if you're releasing from a high off angle and that kind of deal. We are up here at about 20,000 feet. I'm going to go ahead and set ourselves to a 20,000 foot altitude hold. Through the powers of time compression, we're going to advance forward to attack the site, which is in fact guarded by an SA-3. Let's go ahead and dial up our warnings and everything else. Solid line, so we are in a position where we could attack this target. I just want to make sure that we are targeting the right things first. There's our SAM site. And GB6 away. Got some vehicles over here and GB6 away. And some more vehicles over here. LS6 away. That looks frightening.
Tracking, tracking, tracking. Tracking, tracking, tracking.
And there's a tank. All weapons deployed.
Tracking, tracking,
And we're going to leave.
tracking, tracking, tracking.
Helps if my G-suit's actually getting air.
Tracking,
It's hard for it to compress all the blood vessels if it's not, you know,
tracking, tracking, tracking,
doing its thing.
tracking, tracking, tracking. Tracking, tracking, tracking. Tracking, tracking, tracking. Tracking, tracking, tracking. Tracking, tracking, tracking.
I think the possibility exists there where
Tracking, tracking, tracking.
some of those
Tracking,
weapons didn't quite
tracking,
make it.
Tracking, tracking, tracking. Tracking, tracking, tracking. Tracking, tracking, tracking.
Some of those hit the side of that hill.
Tracking, tracking,
But
tracking.
the most important one got here.
Tracking, tracking, tracking. Tracking, tracking, tracking. Tracking, tracking, tracking.
Okay, well, that site's dead. Let's go ahead and focus on coming back to make a landing. So we can tell here that Creech is waypoint 53. Our default, though, takes us home, back to Nellis. We're going to change this to waypoint 53. We have new symbology on the HUD. Those are those two horizontal and vertical bars there. That represents the ILS cross. Set ourselves up for the right set of lights. And we're going to cruise on back, hit our ILS circle, and we'll make our way around to land using the cross. We'll be able to see the runway, which is great, but we're going to try and fly it as if it were an instrument landing. A little fast and we're a little low. And fix that a little bit here.
Road 56, 460 at 12,000 cold.
And as we're meeting up here with the circle, we'll start flying that around. Creech is over here, just over that ridge line here to our left, about our 10 o'clock. So again, setting up the APR mode for those 8 runways that are stored in the computer system, it will give you all of the information automatically in terms of the TACAN beacon,
Dodge 1, Overlord 1-1.
ILS information if it's got it,
460 at 12,000 knots.
all the bells and whistles. Alright, so we're cruising back. Let's go ahead and start configuring for landing. The gear's coming down, the flaps are coming down. And it looks like we're just about on that course line, but we are below glide slope. It's okay for now, as we're still some distance away. Glide slope will come down to meet us. A little right of center, so we're just going to adjust it a little bit. I'm going to pick up the airspeed just a little more, try and get up to that course line for the glide slope. Just like any of those different indicators, they really don't start moving until you get close to them. So try not to overcorrect and be overzealous about, climbing up to meet something or diving down to meet something, because you'll probably fly right through it in either direction if you're not careful. We're slightly below glide slope now because it's not a perfect cross around our flight path marker. Or the extra L I throw in on flight path. That slope's coming up. Indexer's looking good.
Altitude. Altitude.
Passing through 200 feet
Altitude.
radar altitude. Hypothetically, in a bad weather situation or a nighttime situation, and somehow for some reason these lights weren't on, I'd see the runway at this point and can make the last minute little manual corrections, but I should already basically be right where I need to be. Gentle touchdown. As wheel came down, chute deployed. Got a little bit of a crosswind at Creech compared to Nellis. Actually, I'll hold quite a bit of left rudder right now. Nose wheel steering is still off. Haven't applied the brakes until just now. Nose wheel steering is now on. Should have been, yeah, there it goes. Go and cross the active here. Leave our drogue chute to the chute monkeys.
Warning.
Turn on our 125 air conditioning system.
Dodge 1, Overlord.
It's one window open at 25 knots.
035450 at 12,000 knots.
And that's it. Alright folks, hope you've enjoyed watching the show here today. It's certainly been a good time and good flying and good trip. Usual week-to-week schedule is kind of up there on the screen. We should be back Monday for about 7 p.m. just to do some general flying in DCS, probably up with Mander, Trigger, and possibly Ihort. And followed up with classic games. We were playing Star Trek: A Final Unity last week. We're going to continue on with that playthrough. This coming Friday, we should be up for Arma 3. Actually, no, we won't be up for Arma 3 at all. Because we've got folks being out of town, and I should be on to stream, but we'll probably make that a DCS night as well. It should be a good time, and then we'll be back Saturday for more Pilum Teaches DCS. We're going to be working with more systems on the aircraft. Might even do like a little bit of a joint operation mission with folks if we can get some of the other members of the team up and about here on a Saturday morning. So with that, folks, appreciate all the likes, all the follows, all the subscribes. Those really do keep the channel moving and flowing. If you would prefer, you can also donate directly at coffee.com/PilumJRMR. Catch us and other VODs on the YouTube channel there at PilumRMR. And, as always ask for consent. Try to communicate as best you can with your partners. Try to be genuinely decent human beings. And I will catch up with you next time. Thanks for watching, folks. Have a great day.